Story 1. We had a couple here in Germany, Siegfried and Ute Steiger. They lost their son Bjorn because the ambulance arrived too late after an accident in 1969. They dedicated their entire lives and resources to prevent similar situations. As a result of their efforts, Germany established a standardized emergency number with centralized call centers, emergency phones on all highways, defibrillators in public buildings and spaces, and much more. These improvements have saved hundreds of lives. The Bjorn Steiger Foundation continues to enhance safety even after Siegfried and Ute passed away. Story 2. Frederick Banting, Charles Best, and James Collip, the discoverers of insulin, famously sold their patent to the University of Toronto for $1 each, emphasizing their desire for insulin to be accessible to all and not a source of profit. Story 3. The Soviet military submarine admiral refused to turn one of only two keys needed to initiate a retaliatory nuclear missile launch against the United States when the vessel he was on had no communication with the outside world. But its information-gathering apparatus on board indicated a strike coming from the US had already begun. Everything he and everyone else on board that ship saw convinced him he had to fulfill his duty and send up that missile. He refused. The circumstances, timing, and context just didn't sit right with him, and he refused. It turned out well that he did because the launches they observed from the US were a false alarm, a malfunction. Had he launched that missile, the US likely would have retaliated, and there is a good chance that would have been the end for humanity. He didn't. That man saved the world. Story 4. My old librarian, Mrs. Johnson, stayed late helping kids with their homework. She used her own money to buy books for families who couldn't afford them and created a safe space for all the outcasts at school. Sometimes the best people aren't famous. They're just quietly making the world better every day. Story 5. Shout out to those who never make a list like this because they quietly do good without seeking or gaining attention. Story 6. This is a difficult question to answer. The individuals who invented antibiotics and the seatbelt, yet did not patent their inventions, deserve recognition. Fred Rogers demonstrated the power of kindness to generations. Dolly Parton is a quiet saint to the people of Tennessee and beyond. Story 7. Sir Nicholas Winton has to be up there. He was a British stockbroker who organized a rescue mission that saved almost 700 children from the Holocaust. His own wife didn't even know about it for decades, if I remember correctly. This video of him decades later makes me tear up every time. Story 8. The person who invented the seatbelt chose not to profit from it, ensuring that every car would be safer. Story 9. Jonas Salk invented the polio vaccine and refused to patent it to make it more widely available. This decision likely cost him billions but saved the lives of millions. When asked who owned the patent for the vaccine, Salk famously replied, "The people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun?" Story 10. Norman Borlaug. By 2016, his work on crossbreeding crops like wheat was credited with saving 1 billion people globally from starvation. That number has only increased since then as his contributions continue to be utilized in seat selection. Story 11. Tommy Douglas was the father of Canada's universal healthcare and the grandfather of Kiefer Sutherland. Story 12. James Harrison, not the American football player, is the Australian man known for his golden arm. When it was discovered that his blood contained antibodies that fought off the Rhd antigen, he donated blood as frequently as possible until he was deemed too old to continue by the Australian government. He donated blood every 2 weeks for about 60 years, without exception. It is estimated that his donations have saved the lives of almost 2 million infants. This hero passed away a couple of weeks ago and should be remembered. He is one of my inspirations to give blood as regularly as I can. Story 13. Oskar Schindler may not have been a good person, but he did good things, and to me, that's more important. He undermined the Nazi war effort and saved many Jewish people from the camps. Story 14. There are many great people in the world. My personal favorites are the Irwins. Steve was a legend and a great dad, and Terry raised wonderful children while also dedicating herself to protecting wildlife. I always look forward to seeing their contributions. Story 15. The one whose name you will never know but who gave and sacrificed without recognition or praise. Then they died and were forgotten. That is the best human in history, and I suspect there have been many like them. Story 16. Desmond Doss won the Medal of Honor without firing a single shot in combat. There are likely individuals who have contributed more to society, but I cannot think of anyone who upheld their values in a more heroic or successful manner while remaining actively engaged. He saved the maximum number of lives in a situation where that is not typically a high priority for most people, without taking a single life himself. He is a real-life embodiment of a pacifist hero. Story 17. Fred Mr. Rogers and I will politely disagree with anyone who holds a different opinion. I respect your viewpoint and still care for you despite our differences. Story 18. Statistically, it is likely that some ordinary person lived and died without ever being noticed. Story 19. Theodore Roosevelt. He wasn't meant to be president. That role was given to an oligarch puppet, McKinley, whom the American public voted for despite widespread poverty affecting about 90% of the population, including individuals like Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. Teddy was assigned the powerless position of vice president. However, an assassin, a self-proclaimed anarchist, killed McKinley and arguably did more to stabilize America than any other man, except Teddy himself. The assassin was met with a death sentence. With Teddy now as president, his progressive policies dismantled monopolies like Standard Oil and advocated for labor unions, which are the source of every work benefit you currently enjoy. He championed fairness, regulated the railroads, advocated for pure food and drug standards, broke up bad trusts, created the national park system, played a role in resolving the Russo-Japanese War, and initiated the construction of the Panama Canal. Essentially, he made America remarkable, and this progress continued until the Nixon and Reagan administrations when the nation began to regress, leading to the current situation under Trump, where we are now facing a significant decline. Story 20. My grandma never spoke a bad word about anyone. She was always smiling and trying to make a difference. I miss her very much. Story 21. Fred Rogers used his television show to teach kindness, empathy, and emotional intelligence to generations of children. Story 22. That's a hard one. There are a lot of possible names. For me, I want to say Jimmy Carter. I know his presidency wasn't perfect, so don't criticize me. However, his life of genuine selfless service is a model of what a good man is. In a world full of bad examples of what a Christian is, he was the finest example you could hope to find. Story 23. Newton or Galileo. I'm not sure if you mean best in an emotional sense, such as kindness and compassion, or most impactful in terms of advancing humanity, or if you have another criterion in mind. Story 24. William Wilberforce was the most prominent advocate for the abolition of slavery in the British Empire, marking the first time a major power peacefully and willingly abolished its slave trade. Wilberforce died shortly after Parliament passed the law. Terry Fox is a Canadian hero who lost his leg to cancer in 1979 at the age of 18. He later set off on his marathon of hope to raise money and awareness for cancer. His goal was to run a marathon every day, despite being on an uncomfortable prosthetic leg intended for walking, until he had crossed the entire length of Canada. His cancer returned during the run, and he was forced to retire after reaching Thunder Bay, Ontario, before dying of cancer months later at the age of 22. His run raised over $20 million for cancer research, and the Terry Fox Foundation has continued his legacy, raising over $750 million for cancer research to date. Over 40 years after his passing, Terry Fox remains one of Canada's greatest national heroes. Story 25. I will nominate James Harrison. You may have seen him mentioned recently since he passed away. He is the Australian who donated plasma over 1,000 times in his life, saving millions. James primarily donated plasma after his blood was found to contain antibodies against the RhD antigen, making it useful in preventing Rh disease. He was one of the founding donors for the New South Wales Rh program. Story 26. I wasn't around when Carter was President of the United States, but seeing how he lived his life afterward is quite admirable. He is very humble and generous in his efforts to make the world better for those who have little. Story 27. Honestly, I appreciate you taking the time to recognize and reciprocate humanity. Mindfulness. Story 28. Jim Varney was a classically trained actor with a huge passion for making the world a better place. He was a heavy smoker but never let children see him smoking, as he didn't want to influence them into bad habits. Lee Iacocca saved countless American jobs and restored the Statue of Liberty, showing little concern for public opinion. Bob Ross may not have been the best human in history, but he deserves an honorable mention. None of his works were ever sold. They were all donated to public broadcasting service stations. However, he did use the platform to promote his art school and supplies, and he was a strict drill sergeant during his military career. Fred Rogers is often considered one of the best people in history. As a Presbyterian minister, he changed the lives of children for 50 years by teaching self-love, acceptance, tolerance, and equality. Story 29. Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Without providing context, study what he has accomplished. Don't ask an Indian. Read about him. Story 30. Trump, as he would like you to believe, was elected twice and is likely to run for a third term. He bends the rules of space, time, and the Constitution at will, like some kind of fearless Superman. These are the best times to be alive, all because of this one man. Story 31. I know it calls for one, but we needed all four. Sir Frederick G. Banting, Charles H. Best, J.J.R. McLeod, and James B. Collip discovered and developed insulin. Type 1 diabetes was no longer a death sentence. Story 32. Fritz Haber created the process for making fertilizer that allows us to feed billions of people. He is a controversial figure in history. Story 33. Complicated question. As far as I know, Fred Rogers lived every day of his life encouraging people to be kind to one another. I believe there would be significantly less good in the world if not for him. Story 34. Good question. Some good answers. In my life, the best person was my dad. He was a saint to his family. I would need to see more answers here to make a decision about a historical figure. I try to emulate my dad so I can be seen as a good person when all is said and done. Story 35. A lot of people are mentioning individuals who saved many lives, but when you say best, I don't think of material impact. I think of virtuous traits. Saving lives is great, but it's not a character trait in and of itself. Some people are just in the right place at the right time to save lives. My first instinct is to name prominent historical figures whose personal lives were relatively uncontroversial. Abraham Lincoln comes to mind, though he was consistent in his willingness to preserve slavery to maintain the Union. Then I thought of Nelson Mandela, but sources indicate there were legitimate controversies questioning his character at least somewhat. I ruled out several great historical figures based on what I already knew. Martin Luther King Jr. was a serial cheater. Mahatma Gandhi had questionable aspects of his personal life. Mother Teresa believed the sick should suffer and misused donations. George Washington owned slaves. So, historical figures almost inevitably have some flaws. The most virtuous person in history is probably some completely unheard of individual who was generally selfless in their life and did not seek fame. Basically, a Jesus type but without the followers and preaching. Story 36. Paul McCartney is not perfect, but the amount of positive love, good vibes, and common ground through music that he has contributed to the world is historically significant. Story 37. No human is perfect. In the end, they are all flawed and will have the same failings as everyone else. Mother Teresa had a controversial legacy and was criticized for her treatment of patients in need. Gandhi's actions and personal beliefs have also faced scrutiny, including allegations of inappropriate behavior. Winston Churchill held views that are considered racist by today's standards. It is important to acknowledge the complexities of historical figures without placing them on pedestals. Story 38. I don't know, man. Martin Luther King Jr.? Not a single person to ever live is completely good because humans are not inherently good in that way. Martin Luther King Jr. probably did the best and beyond what anyone could ask for. Story 39. Henry II, Plantagenet King of England. I see there are some French in the comments today. Aquitaine is and always shall be a rightful property of the British monarch. Story 40. That is a very tough question to answer because there have been so many people, experiences, and achievements that helped shape the world we live in today. People like Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, Marie Curie, and Nikola Tesla are just a few examples. There are so many more that I would struggle to choose even the top 100, but it is a very thought-provoking question. Story 41. Tesla did not have any personal scandals and helped create the modern world by inventing alternating current and radio, along with many other contributions. These two inventions have saved millions of lives and transformed society. Story 42. Many good people were noted throughout human history. I would like to add someone who is not widely recognized yet. Irina Sendelrova. During World War II, she managed to smuggle approximately 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto, saving them from death. She never disclosed the exact number of children she saved, stating that it was too little. To keep records and facilitate future reunions with their families, she meticulously documented each child's identity. After the war, many of those she saved not only survived but lived out their lives peacefully until old age. Unfortunately, Sendelrova passed away on May 12, 2008, due to old age. May her memory be a blessing. Story 43. As a proud Indian, there is only one option. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. I don't need to elaborate. Story 44. The person who domesticated the wolf should be recognized among the great figures in human history for the lasting impact of that moment. Story 45. I don't know if he is the best, but he is at the top of my personal list. Steven Hillenburg. He spent his childhood doodling fish and oceanic creatures, and after finishing high school, he was unsure whether to pursue a career in marine biology or animation. He chose the latter but continued to draw marine animals and volunteer at an aquarium, mixing both passions. The creator of Rocko's Modern Life gave him an audience at Nickelodeon, where Steven presented his prototype idea for a cartoon featuring a marine character having wacky adventures. In 1999, he created SpongeBob SquarePants, bringing joy to countless people around the world. He animated the first 3 seasons and then directed the movie, which became the most profitable film Nickelodeon ever made. Feeling he had already placed his creation at the pinnacle, he decided to step away. Nickelodeon continued making seasons, but without Hillenburg's vision, the show declined in quality. Steven passed away in 2018. Story 46. Chun Sujihara drafted documents day and night to spare as many people as he could from the horrors of the Holocaust. Story 47. My best friend's mother played a crucial role in my life. I experienced a challenging home environment, yet I became well-adjusted because I consistently had a safe second home and family to turn to while growing up. Given my father's behavior, many other parents felt I was too guilty by association for their kids to associate with me. There is a stark contrast between the person I am today and where I might have ended up if it weren't for her invaluable support and parenting. Story 48. The first woman to give a man oral sex. Additionally, the first person to say, "Rotting milk in a cow's dead stomach? I'll try that." And a shout out to Carl Sagan. Story 49. Norman Borlaug was an agronomist during the Green Revolution who helped develop high-yield, disease-resistant varieties of wheat. His work saved billions from starvation. Story 50. My teacher, Mr. Rue, was a passionate philosophy professor and educator. He encouraged us to want to learn and listen to his students. He was greatly appreciated but left us too soon. Story 51. My mom is the most genuinely selfless person I know. She is also ambitious and has been successful by any measure you want to apply. She is truly amazing. Story 52. I think Martin Luther King had a significant impact by presenting a unifying, nonviolent philosophy in the context of history. That is quite enlightened and substantial. Story 53. Roger Casement was an Irishman who worked as a British diplomat in South America and the Congo. He played a significant role in uncovering abuses of native workforces by colonial powers. In the Congo, he collaborated with a British journalist to provide on-the-ground sources that eventually exposed the humanitarian mask of King Leopold of Belgium. Later in life, he took up the cause of Irish nationalism. An ultimately failed armed uprising led to the British authorities arresting and executing him. He was also a closeted gay man at a time when Victorian sensibilities were the norm. He was truly a remarkable man who fought for justice everywhere he went. A man whose curiosity led him to live multiple lives that common people can only dream of. I'm not Irish or British, but I consider him a personal hero. Story 54. Richard Rescorla was courageous. He was last seen climbing up the stairs to make a final sweep for other employees minutes before the building collapsed. Story 55. Probably someone we have all never heard of, just a cool parent who was an outstanding individual and raised wonderful children to be amazing people themselves. Story 56. This was a great read about many wonderful individuals. However, the best human beings are likely those who remain unknown and unappreciated. This message is for all of you. Keep it up, keep going, and thank you. Story 57. James Harrison, born in 1936, is the man who has saved millions of babies. The blood of this Australian, nicknamed the man with the golden arm, contains a very rare antibody that can be used to treat babies with rhesus disease, a severe type of anemia caused by incompatibility between the blood of the fetus and its mother. He has donated blood 1,000 times over 56 years, saving 2 million babies. His blood has also been used to develop a vaccine that will save babies forever. He began donating when he turned 18, after receiving 13 liters of blood following an operation at the age of 13. Story 58. Probably someone none of us know, but I believe Jimmy Carter is the best person who has ever held the office of president. Story 59. It's unfortunate that we cannot use pictures, because your question is located directly below a video of Fred Rogers. Story 60. Too many to name, most are simple citizens. Often, it is not a single individual but the cause that brings people together to fight. They are just as important as a leader. Story 61. This video never fails to make me emotional. He was truly the best neighbor, and you always felt accepted and liked when you watched his show. He genuinely practiced what he preached. Story 62. Terry Fox is a Canadian legend. The more I read about him, the more I am impressed by his heart and courage. Story 63. Mary Maloney followed Churchill, when he was a member of Parliament, with a huge bell and clanged it every time he spoke in protest of his opposition to women having the vote. Story 64. Someone who showed up, took care of their responsibilities, no matter how big or small, and left a lasting legacy with the people they knew. We may never know who this person is because they focused on doing those things and not seeking attention from others. Story 65. Well, it certainly isn't me after the eye rolls and disbelief at seeing modern pop culture figures like Bob Ross and Steve Irwin. Great talents, but best human in history? Seriously, where is the knowledge of history? Anyway, I support people who inspire change and demonstrate that change is possible. Gandhi. Mandela. Story 66. People don't know the difference between fiction and history. If we're allowed fiction, I'm choosing Barry Allen. History, verifiable history. William Wilberforce. Story 67. I believe Jesus is the greatest of all time. However, if we exclude him, I think Isaac Newton holds that title. Newton fundamentally changed the course of history. He viewed the world as something calculable and predictable through a few laws of physics. The scientific revolution that Newton sparked was not limited to science alone. He instilled the idea that everything operates according to causality in other fields of study as well. Story 68. Whoever Jesus was, he was apparently quite popular. There aren't many negative things said about him. People claim he is even the Son of God. Imagine being so remarkable that people are literally out there talking about you. The Son of God. Story 69. Whoever invented the wheel or discovered electricity, even if they were as bad as Adolf Hitler as a person, made a contribution that moved the world forward in an immeasurable way. Story 70. Elon Musk. Couldn't resist. I am honestly fascinated by how someone can fall from being universally admired to being compared to Adolf Hitler. Wow. Story 71. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are both tied for first place in my opinion, although Tim can be a bit foolish at times. Story 72. Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, his so-called followers have gone rogue. However, he warned that this would happen. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.